So I want to share some thoughts on the Dillian Whyte um, drug situation. There's been a lot of talk about Dillian's fighting for his career. He's got a B sample due, and it's been 20, 25 odd days, roughly, give or take, since the fight. No one's seen a B sample. No news of whether he's had that tested. What were the results from it? The way I see it is kind of slightly different, in the sense of, whilst there's all this talk of B sample, I haven't heard anything from the British Board of Boxing Control, neither UCAD, on there being an outstanding bit of evidence that's required. If you look through the information that has been shared by Eddie Hearn and various other kind of news reports, there was a substance found in Dillian Whyte's A sample. And just for those that don't know, what happens in those situations is the A sample, whoever the testing body is, the protocol usually is they'll test that, they'll let you know what the results from that are. Now, if that all comes up all good, fine, no talk of B sample. However, if there's adverse findings, the B sample is still locked away until such time that the fighter or one of their representatives wants that tested at their cost. In this case, something like 150 quid, 350 quid, whatever it is, and they can be present during that testing. So the fighter, either the fighter and the representative, or just the representative, someone from their camp can be present whilst the testing is done on the B sample, so that any claims of tampering or bias, all of that are taken care of. Now, that doesn't mean that any tampering with the sample was in between them being presented to be tested in front of the fighter or the representative is cleared. No, that kind of thing, however unlikely it may be, that type of thing can happen. But anyway, going back to the case. Now, as Eddie Hearn's kind of laid out, there was some adverse findings, and these were UCAD findings, not VADA. So any tests that Dillian did with VADA he was tested clean, and I believe there were numerous ones of those. So this test apparently was done a month before the fight. They only found out the results from UCAD 3 or 4 days before the fight, and on the day of the fight there was a hearing, so on the Saturday apparently, and evidence was presented during that hearing, and Dillian Whyte was cleared to fight. Now, there's no talk whatsoever of, from UCAD or any of those sources that have related some of this story, that, you're cleared to fight now, but there's still this case hanging over you. So there was none of that. So the reason why I'm pointing that out is, if there was, then the B sample is relevant. Then it's a case of, you are allowed to fight, but the investigation is still pending. If that's the case, that's a whole heap of mess. I mean, if I was in Oscar Rivas' shoes and that happened, I'd be speaking to my lawyers. Against all parties involved, actually. But anyway, he was cleared, and the way the information is being portrayed out is that if he was cleared, the evidence presented there was sufficient to justify or account for the adversity in the sample A, and he was cleared. Now, that means there's no need to test the B sample, because upon the adverse finding of the A sample being explained away, or Dillian being cleared, means there's no need to test the B sample. Now, what I think is the stressful situation that Dillian's under, and everyone involved, I think, but more so Dillian, because at the end of the day, it's him that's being affected the most. In some respects, if everything stays quiet from now on in, everyone else is in the clear, because no one else is any the wiser about what happened. But Dillian wants that information shared out, I would have thought, because everyone is up in arms about, well, what actually happened during that hearing? What was the evidence that was presented? And therefore, the reason why he was cleared. So I think that's the kind of lay of the land right now. That's probably what Dillian is battling in the background. I don't think it's B sample related. It's to do with whatever the evidence was that was presented to clear him on the testing of the A sample. So I don't think it's no longer a case of was something in his system. It seems as though it definitely, there was something there, or the sample was tampered with. But whatever it is, it was explained away with that evidence. And what boxing fans want to know, what I want to know, what Oscar Rivas probably wants to know is what the heck was it? What was the evidence that was presented, and why was he cleared? And the issue there is confidentiality that Dillian has to adhere to, because then he could be subjected to fines, litigation, sanctions by any of the governing bodies for revealing any of this information. However, this could put them in a bad light if they cleared him for any kind of bogus reasons. So I think that's the main issue there. Through the grapevine, I'm hearing that what the situation was, and this is obviously all alleged, is that there was a tainted supplement that he had taken, and it was proved to be a tainted supplement. So what you mean? What tainted means is it's not a substance that's listed in the ingredients. It's something that wasn't supposed to be there. So with that in mind, and if that is the case, then there's clear grounds to, I believe, him being cleared. However, what should happen then is that it should be made public about what that supplement was, so that others can be made aware, and then there should be whatever repercussions for the company that manufactures that supplement. Now, this is all alleged. This is just what I'm hearing through the grapevine. Now, it could all be completely false. There could be an element of truth to it. From where I'm hearing it from, and the credibility of the grapevine, let's leave it at that. I think that is, personally think that that's quite accurate. But I don't have that evidence. I haven't seen it for myself, so I'm none the wiser other than hearing what I've heard. But it does make a lot of sense, and it does. You can logically see why something like that, an evidence presented to show that to be the case, would allow Dillian, him getting into this mess, not of his own accord, but also how he was then subsequently cleared to fight. Um, so I mean, that's the only one of the only plausible situations where I can see him coming out clean, but not necessarily, but that doesn't necessarily put anyone else in a great light. It doesn't put UCAD in a good light. Now, I've been critical of UCAD, well, not online, but the people I know on the handling of the whole Fury case. I think that was absurd, the way that case was handled. Now, whether you believe Fury's guilty or innocent is a different matter. The fact that they only informed him and others of an adverse finding, I want to say kind of reports that I've read, so don't quote me on this, was something like 9 months after the findings, and there was a subsequent fight in between that. And then Fury went on to fight Vladimir Klitschko. Now, if he was guilty, why wasn't this addressed much earlier? And why wasn't he banned much earlier? If you think about, I've heard lots of other comments around. Well, he wasn't attending the hearings, that delayed the process, and all the rest of it. In my book, you don't have to have the boxer present for you to ban them. If there's an adverse finding, you can ban them immediately. You can then go through an appeals process, and that can take a long time. Fair enough. But the fact of the ban, that should be immediate. Why do you need to wait for someone to be present for you to adjudicate? Do you think if you do a robbery, you get caught, you skip bail and run off, or a murder, people are looking for you, and sanctions, there can be an arrest warrant put out for you. In this case, the governing body has the power to put out the bans as per their code of conduct and their rules. Now, I know they have in instances of substance abuse and PEDs, they've outsourced all of that to UCAD. So they've given all the rights in terms of kind of findings and bans to UCAD. So the British Board of Boxing Control do not even ban themselves. They leave all of that process to UCAD. So whether they were right or wrong to do that's the case. I personally think that they should have more control, and the British Board of Boxing Control in this situation can maybe use the public outcry from the Dillian Whyte situation to revisit the contract, to say, this is making a farce of the sport, and is bringing the reputation of the Boxing Board of Control into disrepute, bringing the sport into disrepute. So the way I see it, Dillian Whyte and the British Board of Boxing Control would want findings and the hearing details to be shared, because that gives them, Dillian, it allows him to clear his name, and it allows the British Board of Boxing Control to maybe, if they want to, reclaim some of the authority that they have around the authority that they would have around bans on performance enhancing drugs. Parties that might not want that information shared out, UCAD. I think the stress right now is UCAD, Dillian Whyte's lawyers battling with UCAD's lawyers to have for UCAD to put out a statement about what happened, and for Dillian to be able to openly speak about it, because until he's able to openly speak about it, even if he's cleared, there will be a shadow over him, and his name will be tarnished. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Would love to hear feedback, because I know this is a slightly different view, and I've probably shared a bit of information that's not widely out there. So yeah, comment below. Thank you. Bye.